Going to work. Okay, so we're finishing up our sermon series on Habakkuk this week, and if you remember from last week, Habakkuk just got told, right? He just got told by God. I mean, he had just been talking to God, and God had kind of said, all right, I've listened to you for a little while here, and I think I'm pretty much done, because he was bold and he was very honest with God, and that was a good thing. That was a wonderful thing, that he was bold and honest with God. When he first started to talk to God about the things that were going on in Judah, he was very bold and he was honest, and he was saying, God, how long? How long is this going to go on? How long are you going to continue to just turn your face away from what's happening here? And so he was really bold and he was really honest with God, and we talked about how that's a very good thing. That's one of those things that allows our relationship with God to grow when we're very bold and we're very honest with him. But he went a little bit too far last week, as we saw, because he also got kind of prideful. In the midst of his honesty and in the midst of his boldness, he became pretty prideful. And so God came back to him and said, you know what? I am seeing everything that's going on in Judah. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to send the Chaldeans or the Babylonians to take care of this problem. But, Habakkuk didn't really like that answer. And so he was like, oh, God, no, wait a minute, not that, not those guys. And he started to compare the Judeans to the Babylonians, and he just got really prideful. And he kind of tried to tell God, no, God, I'm not sure that that's such a good idea. And let me kind of tell you a metaphor about why I don't think that's a good idea. And he accused God of being someone who liked to kill. And God didn't really, he didn't like that so much. And so God comes back at him as he's telling Habakkuk and putting Habakkuk in his place. And at one point he actually kind of is like, Habakkuk, are you drunk? Because surely you wouldn't be saying these things unless you were drunk. I mean, you're so prideful here, and you're saying all these things, and you're forgetting who God is and who you are in relationship to God. And so that's kind of where we were. And so God comes back and assures him. He says, listen, I hear what you're saying, but this is going to happen. The Chaldeans are going to come, and they are going to bring judgment to Judah, whether you, Habakkuk, think it's the right idea or not. But we're not going to read all of this because it's kind of long. But God comes back, this is where we're going to pick up the story tonight. God comes back even after saying to him, hey, the Chaldeans are going to come, and they are going to bring judgment to Judah. He also comes back and says, but the Chaldeans are also going to be held accountable. And so the next thing you see in chapter 2 is what's called the woes to the Chaldeans. And it's very interesting language that he uses here. I love the language that's used here. And so in chapter 2, verses 6 through 20, there's a series of woes against the Chaldeans. And they're very poetic and they're very descriptive. And if you like that kind of stuff, if you're like a wordsmith, go back and read some of that. I'm just going to kind of give you some of the examples here that I kind of thought were kind of cool. But it says that they too will receive judgment in their time. It's not just the Judeans that are going to be held accountable. The Chaldeans, even after they come in and kind of teach you guys a lesson, then they are going to get their comeuppance a little bit later as well. Okay, so they're not off the hook. And here's some of the language that I thought was kind of cool. Woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. And this was the Chaldeans. These guys were ruthless. They were violent. And they would go through and they would just bring cities and countries to their knees. And so this whole idea of woe to him that builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. I don't watch Game of Thrones. I know that people back here in the corner do. Yeah, got a Game of Thrones t-shirt on right now, don't you, Reagan? Yeah, you do. This just sounds to me, even though I don't watch the show, this kind of sounds to me like a Game of Thrones kind of language. Is this Game of Thrones kind of language, Builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, okay, good.
With some cuss words.
With a few. Yeah, okay, so this is the cleaned up version of Game of Thrones. Okay, who knows, there might have been some cuss words in here originally, before it got cleaned up for us. Anyway, so this was kind of interesting, but then the Chaldeans also they weren't just brutal and violent, but they wouldn't be satisfied with just killing you. They wanted to humiliate you first. And so a lot of times what they would do when they went into a city or a country and they conquered them, they would kill their share of people But then they would also pretty much line them up and strip them and then kind of march them around. Because they were, ruthless and godless and prideful and all these other kind of things. And so they were pretty famous for humiliating people. And so another interesting part of these woes that I was kind of like, ooh, yeah. In one place, basically, it says, woe to you Chaldeans, because the same thing that you did to other people by humiliating them, by marching around naked, the same thing's going to happen to you. And it says basically your uncircumcision is showing. He was basically saying it. Yeah, think about that for a second. Basically, he's saying, woe to you Chaldeans, because, before long, your uncircumcision is going to show. Okay? In other words, you're going to be stripped naked and marched around as well. And if you know anything about history, they too fell. The Chaldeans did fall, and a lot of these things that were mentioned in these woes of Habakkuk were definitely things that came to pass. And so the Chaldeans were going to receive their judgment, and I just think that's pretty crazy. Your uncircumcision is showing. Anyway, moving right along. So then we get to Habakkuk 3, which is really where I want to camp out tonight. It's really what I want to kind of focus in on, because this is the conclusion to this whole crazy conversation that's been going on. This honest and bold conversation that turned into something prideful, that turned into this series of very graphic woes and all these other things. This is where the conclusion comes. And it's a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, according to Shigionoth. Okay? So, this begs the question, right? Who's Shigionoth, right? Who is Shigionoth? Anyone got their phone open, and that's what it pretty much says. A prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, according to Shigionoth, right? Yeah? Anyone? Can anyone verify this? Can anyone? Yes, Reagan, thank you. That's what it says, right? So you're like, okay, who is Shigionoth? Well, Shigionoth isn't a person. Okay? Shigionoth is actually a musical term. Okay? Angie, anything? No? Not one that you use often? Shigionoth?
I got nothing.
You got nothing, okay. All right, Shigionoth. We're going to learn about Shigionoth tonight, and I like to say the word Shigionoth. I have no idea if I'm saying it right, but I think it just sounds cool. So Shigionoth is a musical term, and what this is indicating, it's used one other time in Scripture. I believe it's in Psalm 7, and it says the same thing, although it's the singular version that's used instead of the plural version that's used here. For all you Hebrew scholars out there, where's Andrew when I need him, because he would certainly point that out to me later. Yes, he would. Anyway, so it's used in Psalm 7, and what this musical term is all about, basically what this is saying is that this is a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, that is to be sung to a tune that is exuberant and energetic. Okay? So Shigionoth is this idea of a tune, and it's a musical term that means, okay, this needs to be sung as something upbeat. This needs to be presented to a tune that's got a little to it, okay? It's got a little energy. Yeah, I'm really bad at that. I wish I had, Garrett to beatbox or something behind me, but it indicates energy and exuberance, okay? But the interesting thing is that the message is not energetic or exuberant, which is probably why there's that notation there. Hey, this prayer kind of looks like a dirge. It kind of looks like something that should be like, should be in a minor key. But no, this is to be set to music that is energetic and exuberant. So this kind of sets the stage here for this prayer that we want to look at in Habakkuk chapter 3. And this is the way it starts out after Shigionoth. It says, O Lord, I've heard the report of you and your work. O Lord, do I fear? In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. So have any of you guys picked out a Shigionoth tune in your head yet that you're singing this to? Are you picking out something with a little bit of beat and a little bit of energy, and you're like, oh Lord, I've heard the report? I kind of think it's country music. Because, when you listen to country music a lot of times, especially the new country, which doesn't really sound like country, which is fine because I don't like country. But when you listen to a lot of, country music, and I was trying to come up with an example, but I really couldn't because I couldn't bear to listen to it. But, the message of country music a lot of time is, My girl left, my dog left, my truck broke down. Everything is like, down. But yet, the tune is like rocking and you can dance to it, right? And so that's what I kind of imagine here that we're trying to get at in Habakkuk chapter 3. But, this is not a real energetic kind of message here. I mean, Habakkuk is gaining acceptance here that something bad is about to happen to him and his people. But yet he's singing this song that's upbeat. And so he's gaining some acceptance. And the action that he's getting his way. He asks God to do something about the trouble in Judah. And yep, it's happening. And so upbeat. It's all upbeat. Because the action he's asked for is coming. But all that he can do at this point is ask for mercy. Okay, God. It's coming. It's not going to be pretty. We're not going to like it, but maybe we deserve it. Can you please just have mercy on us? To a nice beat. Can you have mercy, but give it a good beat? That's all he can do at this point is just ask for mercy. And so he goes on there and he launches into, after this, we're not going to read this whole chapter, but read it later. It's pretty fascinating. He launches into this description of God as a creator. And he talks about his creative power. And he's talking about creation. And let me just kind of give you some hints if you want to go back and read it. It talks about a lot of places that you may be like, I don't know where these places are. Well, basically, they refer to Eden, okay? And so it was the area of the country that they thought of as being where Eden was. And so he launches into this description of God being this creative warrior, basically. It's this combination, this kind of cool combination of God as a warrior. And it has all these pictures of God kind of, as he's creating the world, kind of conquering it. And let me just kind of give you some of an example here. It says, you strip the sheath away from your bow. Just kind of imagine this, especially for those of you whose husbands are out bow hunting elk right now. Ashley, he got one, by the way. And you strip the sheath from your bow, calling for many arrows. You split the earth with rivers. So what he's kind of saying here is you took arrows and you shot them and it went through the earth and made rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. The raging water swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and the moon stood still in their place at the light of your arrows as they sped, at the flash of your glittering spear. So you see this imagery, and it just goes on and on for verses much like this, where God is this creator, but he's also this kind of warrior that's subduing the earth. And it's really, Ashley and I were picking out music on Thursday after I got back from my conference. We were picking out music, and that song, My Glorious, we were just kind of flipping through old music, and Ashley was like, oh, My Glorious. And then, because honesty time, I didn't start my sermon until this morning, I have to tell you. So that's why it's not great. But I did start, and so Ashley and I were kind of going through it, and we didn't really pick that one out, but then after I was doing my sermon, I was like, yeah, because that whole idea of My Glorious is this picture of God in this glory and creation and all this kind of thing, and that's what Habakkuk is talking about here. He's talking about God as this warrior that has created and the power it took to create. And you have to remember that for these folks, the power of creation was the most powerful thing on earth. And we still use creation to power things. We use windmills, we use water, we use all sorts of things because it is a powerful force. Now, of course, we've created more forceful things, but to them, it was the most powerful force on earth, creation and nature. But yet, God was a warrior that created it and subdues it. And even the earth had to throw up its hands to God. So if the earth had to throw up its hands to God, if the earth had to submit to God, this warrior, in its very creation, how much more so the enemies of God? If the earth couldn't stand up to God, the Chaldeans, won't be able to stand up to him either. And so there's this understanding, this beautiful picture of understanding who God is here. And so God will bring even the most violent, the Chaldeans, under his power. And then it picks up towards the end of his description of God as this warrior that has created and subdued the earth. Habakkuk says, I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness, again, poetic language like crazy. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. Yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. So, this doesn't sound like the same Habakkuk from last week, does it? Does this sound like the same prideful prophet that was going to take his stand at the watchtower and wait for God to answer him? Remember how prideful he was last week, where he was like, all right, God, you kill everybody and you like it, and you're just like a fisherman who just pulls everybody in, and I think you're doing something wrong here, and I'm going to wait for your answer, and I'm going to stand up here on the watchtower and wait for you to come and give me your answer. Doesn't sound like the same guy, does he? Doesn't sound like the same prideful prophet from last week. No, this is a humble prophet. This is someone completely different who has remembered who God is and who he is, who Habakkuk is in relationship to God. He has remembered God's power. He has remembered that God will subdue everything in his time. And so he's standing there and saying, my bones are trembling. My legs are failing beneath me, but I will remain. I will remain and I will wait. But what will he do while he waits? What's he going to do while he waits? He's not being prideful this time around. He's not going to complain. He's not going to compare. Remember last week we talked about him doing the complaining thing and the comparing thing that we've already talked about this summer as being no good. This time he's not going to do those things as he waits. This is what he's going to do. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. There may not be produce. There may not be livestock. And, remember, the Chaldeans were known for ruining the crops and killing the livestock. Again, they didn't just kill you. They didn't just make you naked. They didn't just parade you around. They made you hungry. They killed your crops. They killed your livestock. Habakkuk is very aware of what's coming. But yet, he's going to rejoice in the God that provides salvation. And he's going to rejoice in the God that provides strength. It's quite a turnaround. Quite a turnaround. Because he remembered who God was, and he remembered who he was in relation to that God. So, what does this have to do with me? Well, we've talked about this kind of all summer, and especially as we've started this book, there's a lot of stuff out there. And there's probably a lot of us who are saying, how long, just like Habakkuk did at the very beginning of this book, when he was saying to God, how long is this going to go on? How much longer am I going to be in misery? How much longer is injustice going to reign? How much longer is going to be violence surrounding us? And I want to teach us a new term. And this is one that we all need to remember. Write it on your mirror, do something with it. When times get tough, Shigionoth. I think that's what it was. When times get tough, Shigionoth. We need to remember that. We need to remember Shigionoth. Remember Shigionoth? Yeah, remember energetic and peppy in the midst of, bad stuff. Still, we're going to be happy. Still, we're going to rejoice. Easier said than done, isn't it? Shigionoth is a really fun thing to say, but it's not easy to do. It's not easy to remain upbeat, and it's not easy to find our strength in God, and it's not easy for us to find our hope in God in the midst of our troubles, in the midst of our heartbreak, in the midst of our hardships. It's easier said than done. But it can be done. And what's the key? I think it's practice, practice, practice. I think it's praising even when we don't feel like it. I think it's rejoicing even when that's not exactly the cry of our hearts. I think sometimes we have to fake it till we make it when it comes to Shigionoth. That sometimes we have to sing those songs until we believe them. Sometimes we have to read that scripture until it becomes true in our hearts. And so I really want to ask questions because I know that there are some out there. Think about this for a second because you're going to have to do something with it in a second. Where are your struggles tonight? Where are the spots where you're saying, how long, God? How much longer? Where are the things that you're just like, God, I can't believe you're allowing this to happen. I can't believe that I'm still dealing with this. What are your struggles? Put a name to them. Put a code to them. However you want to do that right now. What's your personal how long, oh God? I think we probably all have them. How much longer is this going to go on? How much longer do I need to deal with this? How much longer am I going to feel this pain? And we're going to turn our how long, oh gods into a Shigionoth art project. Okay? We haven't done this in a while. We used to do this a lot over across the street, several streets, and it's more than just across the street. It's lots across town. Anyway, so we used to do this. Remember, we used to have the prayer things on the wall, and you would just come every week, and you would just kind of write a prayer request, something that you were struggling with or wanted help with and things like that. And then after they got full, what would we do? We would turn those into art. And if you're like, I don't remember that, well, that stuff is back in we have a new room back here for the youth and for the young adults, which used to be my office. And we took some of that art and it's hanging up in there. And so if you don't remember us doing that, we did. We really did. And I want us to do that again. I think there's something healing about that. And so what I want us to do tonight, I've asked you to kind of name some things. And as we go back into a worship set in a little bit, I'm going to ask you to just kind of write these down. And like I said, if you want to code it out, so that no one else knows what you just wrote down, because, not that anyone would do this, but, the last person who comes up and is reading this is going to be like, oh, wow, that's some juicy stuff up there. So if you feel like you need to code it out, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. You don't have to sign your name to it or anything, but write something down on either one of these. A pain, a heartbreak, something that you're just asking God, how much longer? How much longer? And then what I'm going to ask a couple artists to do is take these and make them beautiful. Does that make sense? Take our struggles, take our pain, and turn them into something that we can rejoice about. And that we can look at later and say, oh yeah, I remember that. But God has delivered me. God has taken me through whatever that was. So we're going to cover our struggles with rejoicing. And one of the songs we're going to sing, I know I've gone old school with you guys tonight. One of the reasons was because me and Ashley were going out of an old songbook. But another reason, and this is the song we're going to, oh, sorry. Hey, Garrett's here. Hey, buddy, come on in. Hey, buddy. You were missed. You were missed.
It was an hour ago, bro.
We're going to sing here in a few minutes. We're going to sing the Matt Redman song called Oh No, You Never Let Go. And this is a Shigionoth tune, in my opinion. Let me tell you the first time that as a band I ever played this. And some of you guys might remember this. And I can't remember how long ago it was. All the years start to run together when you get to my age. But there was a young man that had been in our band when he had been in our band, our Sunday morning band, but he had also been in my youth band. He was a drummer. His name was Neil. And he had a motorcycle accident and was killed. And as we were preparing, his family had said, we think that the band from the church, we want them to do the music at the funeral, and because it was something that he loved. And we were looking for music, and I wanted to pick out just the right song, and I ran across this song, and it's not like, it's not rocking, but it's kind of upbeat. At least I think it's kind of upbeat, but yet it's a tough song. And so at Neil's funeral, somebody came up to me afterwards and was like, that was an odd choice. That was an odd choice of songs because, it was really kind of upbeat and you wanted to clap your hands to it. But yet, this is a funeral and it's just, to me, it's a Shigionoth song. And I said to them, to me, there's hope in this song. Even if it's a little upbeat, even if it's kind of a rejoicing, it's still just fit. And so I chose this song for us to sing tonight. And again, practice, practice, practice. And as you're thinking about whatever that struggle is, and I'm going to just ask people, we're actually going to do 2 songs. We're going to go back and do My Glorious again because of the creation kind of aspect and the mightiness of God that's in it. During those 2 songs, if you just come and write something on these boards, I would appreciate it. And then in a few weeks, we'll have some new artwork for in here. Praise God? Yes, praise God. And, but practice, practice, practice. We've got to rejoice in the midst of our suffering until it can be true. Until we can know that in the midst of our struggles, in the midst of our hardship, in the midst of our heartache, that God doesn't let go. And so won't you stand and sing and stand and share and stand and rejoice, but pray with